This is kind of a fun project. It's actually a fun opportunity to share with you what we're doing. The good news is that I absolutely know nothing about it. This is the first year of this study, so I apologize for that, but at the same time, I think it's great to have the opportunity with all these wonderful minds here to contribute to the project itself. So this was a project that actually I've been asked by farmers over the last 6 or 7 years now. It would be really great to know what we can do to manage hail damaged crops, because there's products out there being touted as hail rescue products. There's micronutrient blends. How many of you guys have heard of the evidence in peas? Anybody at all? Do you know what it is? Has anybody experienced one of these miraculous anecdotes that I've heard in peas, for example? Nobody here? Greg, thanks for piping up there. On another note, you know, this is about our 30th tour. So what makes the tours more enjoyable for me, to be selfish, is if you guys can engage in a dialogue. So, you know, I get sick of my own voice. It's the best opportunity to actually get in there and think things through. So really encourage good dialogue and conversation throughout the entire day. That's where you're going to get the most benefit too. So headline apparently on peas. There's stories out there that a guy sprayed his field with headline after a hail and left the other half, and we're talking like 50% yield boost. So this has been quite a few stories. It's not just one isolated story. And it ends up being more, not the protectant against a disease, but growth promotant and, you know, plant hormone type interactions. So that's kind of an interesting thing. So the Pulse Commission was also hearing this and decided to fund our first project on studying hail damaged crops. Of course, you can imagine studying a hail is challenging. First of all, is hail even? Completely. Like, do you get a nice uniform 22.2% damage in a field? No, right off the bat, that makes it a really difficult thing to go study in an infield section. The other big challenge with, say, studying it in real life type scenario is you don't have an actual unhailed check. So if you've got all of these products and you spray a fungicide or a micronutrient, how do you know that that crop wouldn't have responded the same way without damage? So we felt it was, because of those couple of key factors, it'd be really important just to actually have some control over it and build a hail simulator. So we put in proposals, and actually it was the simulation part that really turned the funders off. They're like, you cannot build a hail simulator. They have done this in other parts of the world. There are actual real effective projectile type machines that are out there for testing siding on house and even in crops. Iowa State has some really goofy looking machine that they throw bags of ice in and a little air hose and shoot it out there. You watch the videos and it looks like a lot of fun, but at the same time, I really question their ability of being able to do a nice even application. Because what we need to study things effectively is replication and randomization, so that, you know, we can apply statistics and know with a certain confidence level that the treatments are in fact real. So we met up with AITF. Ralph Lang out of Vegreville actually has been doing quite a bit of work on hail with AFSC. And a big part of that was about understanding how crops recover from hail. Obviously the timing of the hail, the severity, all make a big difference. And they played around with many different ways of trying to simulate it as well, including getting in the back of a truck and shooting pebbles at it and you name it. They found a dog chain, like, you know, a little, literally put on your pet. Whipping a dog chain around gave really good, similar symptoms to an actual hailstorm. I'm kind of fat and lazy, so we mechanized it. And that's really all it is rotating chains. We try to play around, and nicely enough, we were able to develop that quite cheaply. I had quotes to build projectile type instruments at $30,000+, and we put this together at Kirchner here in town for about $4,000. So it allows us to go in there and do a uniform type damage application that's replicable. We have the AFSC adjusters come in and actually look at the damage, and they're quite happy with how it looks. Of course, it's not perfect, but it gives us a certain level of control to be able to study it now. So that's what we've done. We've also built a simulator in Vegreville, so I think they showed it off at the Canola Palooza if you guys were there. Yeah, and we have another one up in Falher with our partners with SARDA. So we've got this across the province. And hail is actually, Alberta is the hail capital of North America. I didn't realize that millions. Last year was another record payout. I think it was $500 million in hail type payout. So it is a big, significant investment. And I myself, as a minuscule farmer, not in size, but in acreage. Shut up, John.
You asked for interaction.
John, I'm so glad you're here. John's.
I didn't know if we should laugh or cry.
Yeah, so. John is awesome. Anyways, dealing with a damaged crop is really quite complex. You know, you've invested a lot in it. There's a Florence Nightingale type effect. I want to be able to help that plant recover, and people are throwing investments at it, and we're not sure whether it's great or not. So in this case, we now actually have hail studies in wheat. The Wheat Commission this spring actually, decided to fund a project for us, so this is it. And we have a study in peas, dry beans, and the canola study is not a hail rescue project. That one's actually an AFSC study, so they're looking at multiple timings and multiple levels. In this case, we racked our brains, you know, because it's really hard to go out there and test every possible scenario. You can see all the way down there, this is a big study. This is about as big as you want to get. We have 27 treatments. The design is a 3 by 3 by 3 factorial arrangement. We have the no damage level. We went with a light damage, so we were targeting around 33% damage and a 66% damage, just to pick a number so that it was double, so a light and a heavy hail. We have 3 treatments for products, an untreated check again, a fungicide, and then a micronutrient or a hail claim product. We've switched it up with the different crops. In this instant, we have Alpine G22 on the wheat, and we have different companies on different crops depending on what claims are. Just kind of randomly searched what was out there. The other side of things is we have 3 timings. On this one, we did, Michael help me out, early, we were kind of like an early hail damage in the tillering. We did that June 16th. We did a heading timing at around June 29th. And then our final timing was kind of like anthesis, grain flowering and filling, July 16th. So that's where the 3 by 3 comes in. Any questions so far? Any comments, anything at all? Yeah. See what I told you?
What? Everywhere. Will this help
Give him a donut.
FSC do earlier assessments to allow guys to silage damaged crops?
Can you maybe repeat that and add a little clarity to it?
So a lot of growers are complaining now that if they have something held out, they don't get a timely assessment.
Okay.
And they can't have trouble making a decision as to whether they should leave it or silage it or do something else with it. I
hope that, you know, the study wasn't completely designed to answer every question, but I think we will definitely learn a few things along the road. When we look at some of the plots, you'll notice what happens a lot of time is you'll have kind of 2 stages of crop. You'll have what's left of the original crop, and then you'll have the regrowth. And then you have kind of 2 stages, and then that really makes it challenging to decide whether you should silage or not. I think that generally we'll probably pick up on a few things that will help guide that type of answer, but a lot of them are going to be case specific. But to add to that, their protocols are interesting. They usually like to wait at least a week to go in to rate the damage, and that's probably a good thing, although the problem is hail happens all at once and the adjusters are just swamped. So they can't make it out to all of the fields, and it's understandable. So sometimes the timing gets a lot later. You know, I think there's intricacies within each crop, how it responds. You know, we've already noticed peas particular are more sensitive to the damage and don't recover the same way wheat. And then the wheat has, like I just described earlier, 2 stages of crops. So Then there's all the other things that happen with maturity. So what do you think happens when you have those two different types of maturity for crops? Any risks there?
Quality.
Say again?
Quality.
Quality, absolutely.
Goes right down the toilet.
Yeah, absolutely. And that I think that's probably one of the biggest factors to consider when making those types of decisions for whether you silage it or not. Yeah.
Is the site irrigated as well?
This site is irrigated, so we do like to, after we do our hail damage, we try to wet it up like a rain. So, yeah.
I have one experience with that silage thing last year near forest, but I think that adjusted. They told you to leave a couple of strips in the field,
Yeah.
and you can silage the rest. And
Yeah, those they leave. You know, if an adjuster isn't able to make it there, then I think most people know you can leave check strips so that you know what the actual yield was. Big difference between defoliation though, and what the FSC people are welcome to pipe up, because I know there's a few of you in here. I know you sneaky buggers are here. Where are you? Just kidding. You chickens. Yeah.
Are you doing any remote sensing with this? You know, it would be an interesting thing to look at that, and then that may actually speed up hail claims.
Oh, I think you're so wrong. Please don't ask any more questions, Jamie. Everyone else can ask questions. No, in fact, we are doing that, and I think it's a very smart comment. So sorry for teasing you. Ann Smith is coming in with remote sensing. One of the measurements that we're doing is green seeker, just the handheld green seekers, and it's showing up. You know what it does is basically how green it is, and you can pick up the differences. So the same technology that's, you know, it ends up giving you an NDVI measurement. So remote sensing can also give an NDVI. We thought that this is maybe a good opportunity for something actually practical and feasible for the drone type stuff. So they're coming in and doing drone measurements. We did put in for some funding applications to study it more specifically, but we haven't been successful yet. But the thought is if we use these plots to calibrate an understanding of the NDVI versus what the actual ratings say that the AFSC guys give us, then maybe what we could do is create an algorithm where you could send a drone out to a farmer's field a week after a hail damage or whenever, fly that field and be able to predict probably two things, the level of damage and then the spatial distribution of damage. I feel like that there's some potential there, but it's really preliminary. But I definitely think that it's worth exploring, and we're going to do our best to. Yeah. Yeah.
What fungicide or fungicides are you using, and what led to the decision making for those ones?
Yeah, and that is the challenge. In this case, we went with Procero, only because we thought that on wheat in particular, I think Fusarium head blight can become a bigger issue with that difference in maturity. So you'll have different heads flowering. I think the flowering period is going to be extended, which essentially is going to increase exposure to head blight. So we did choose something that would have effective or efficacy on head blight. But beyond that, we definitely wanted to have a strobilin on the pulses, which is within headline. And honestly, this is kind of like a proof of concept. We're not out testing everything. We just did our best with common sense to pick out which products were which. Yeah.
No, I was just curious if you are using LiDAR in conjunction with your NDVI data for a better assessment of the different levels within the crop after a hailstorm.
We're not doing LiDAR, but we're physically measuring the heights. So old-fashioned technology, a stick with little lines on it. Yeah. Good stuff.
So after a hail damage, the regrowth, is it noticeably, would it be the tillers that are regrowing? Or it's mostly the tillers?
In the cereals, yeah. Yeah. Because if the wheat head's knocked over, then there's tillers coming up, yeah. Let's take a quick look at the plots then, because we're actually getting pretty short on time here. So untreated checks here, it kind of goes in sets. Everything's in order on our first rep, so it's nicer for touring. But it'll go unsprayed check. This is our fungicide. I'd like you guys to pay attention. I'm actually, this morning I was looking at the plots. I think I'm actually seeing a height difference with their fungicide application. And the only visible, like you can see plant-wise, our leaves are pretty clean. So I'm not really expecting to see much of a fungicide type response. This is our untreated check. You can see our earlier leaves were beat up a little bit, but it's compensated quite well. The only thing that I've noticed here is that we are starting to get little touches of stripe rust come in, and it's pretty obvious that the fungicide has been doing its job on the stripe rust. So we do have some stripe rust popping through. Not, you know, I think the crop is probably advanced enough that this isn't going to be an issue.
Sorry about that.
So in our fungicide treatment, you guys can look in here yourself. Not really seeing any stripe rust in there.
It's very slow.
Yeah, it's Alprime G22. Mikey, do you know what variety we have? I think we actually tried to pick a variety that was somewhat susceptible to leaf disease. Every time we try to study any disease type stuff, we don't get disease, so we tried to pick something that was more susceptible. And I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh, there probably is, absolutely. And in beans, they actually asked us to test 2 varieties. So right here is our first hail damage, and this was done, what did I say, June 16th? You see it's 17th? Thank you. Good thing we staked it.
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, damage was the 15th and the spray application was the 17th, 2 days after. So it's pretty incredible how the difference between timing, like early hail seems to recover well, especially cereals. They can take a licking on the earlier crop stages. So this was not sprayed with anything. Yeah?
Why did you choose the Alpine as that product? Was there any particular reason?
Because they have a hail claim. There's literally an advertised hail rescue claim to it in this case.
Is there any, what's the theory behind it, I guess? What's it supposed to do?
I'd love to know.
That's what I'm figuring out.
Do you know?
No, that's why I wondered why you chose that product. Because
Yeah.
to bring the wheat back.
Well, you know, some people claim boron and all these micronutrient interactions that it's kind of mystical to me. We're going to test it and find out.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Ken, even at the early damage stage, is it still, like, does the main plant come back still? Or is it just tillers from then on?
It would be tillers. It depends on the type of damage. Like if it's knocked right over, if it's broken right off, it's going to be tillers, right?
These ones we damaged right at tillering, so pretty much.
Yeah, you can see the tractor tires. So this was the fungicide here.
You might increase yields with tillering
No.
hail.
And the nutrient blend. Yeah, I think for sure. We're up to now the 66% level. This is the heavier damage, but still early. This is one here. Do you guys see a height difference between these 2 plots, or am I full of it?
Well, we kind of went through a little bit of a...
So this was not damaged. This was our check, and then right here's our spray. I'm almost wondering if I don't see a bit of a height difference there.
Maybe. Oh, a little bit.
And does it matter? I don't know.
A little bit in that.
Yeah, but it was back there. Yeah, it seems to me you have to...
Yeah.
Probably play a role in it because I wasn't there.
Yeah, that's kind of my bet.
So there's some of those things, and then the head shape or the direction. Who knows?
Well, I had a traditional rye, the Prima, and then I had the Catino hybrid rye, and the hybrid's more short and more even heading. And it's
So Ken, how many reps do you have?
This is 4 replicates, yeah. On some of the hail studies, we've actually gone 6, but these ones would do 4. So now we're into... This is a damage at June 29th. So we were only 2 weeks later, but this is the difference in recovery. So timing is really critical on hail. And in this case, you know, disease doesn't look that bad in here. It's just whatever's beat up, right? So not really expecting to see a fungicide response. I mean, we do have the rust in here and leaves are beat up and it's mostly physical damage. Here's our fungicide treatment. You can see now we've got 2 stages of growth. We've got whatever didn't get hit. And now we've got all of these. I'll sacrifice this. So here's a good example where the main head's been knocked. Well, it's done now. Can damage, and then you've got tillers trying to push up, but this one actually does have 2 good viable heads. And then
that's what I've been curious about. Like all
then you've got this sort of stuff coming, right?
The tall ones, I assume, are maybe still the main.
Yeah, main heads. That's the type of damage that you'll see.
Broken ribs.
Yeah, not good stuff. Not really seeing any visual response to our spray treatments except for maybe on the stripe rust.
That's more pronounced than heading.
And now we're into our heading damage, yeah. So this is the latest damage.
Why is it more over there? No damage this side.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a function of the tractor.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, we need higher clearance tires on the tractor. Yeah.
Ken, do you have the fungicide ones? Are you saying they're taller than
I think so.
untreated?
Yeah. Do you see it too?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah. Well, it's having some sort of an effect. Yeah.
When was the fungicide applied then in this one? Like late?
So the damage was done July 15th. The spray application was 3 days later, on the 18th.
Oh, so recently here.
Yeah. Yeah, not that long ago.
That's just me tweeting that.
Just checking the time, man. Yeah.
That's what he tweeted.
Hey? Well, if you had 100% damage, the likelihood of you trying to rescue it is probably this.
But I'm really curious. Some's gonna recover.
We do in our canola study, only in the canola study. Yeah. It becomes a challenge as what are we going to look at, because you can see that there's a million different combinations of things to study. Yeah. It is. It does not look good. Early on though, it does, but later. Yeah. Yes, Rob.
Just a couple questions. First of all, what variety is more resistant? And secondly,
I like that. Well, that's tied to the actual.
Again, I mean, good questions. There's a lot of factors. I can't remember off the top of my head, and we didn't put it down here which variety we used. However, we tried to pick a cultivar that actually had low disease resistance, only because every time we use some of your guys' great varieties, we don't get response to fungicide. Never. We did our night spraying fungicide trial. We only had an actual response to fungicide about 20% of the time. And that makes it really difficult to study any type of disease. So we purposely picked a more susceptible variety. And yeah, varieties could play a role. In fact, on the dry beans side of things, there was a strong recommendation that we look at 2 different types of beans, because there's anecdotal evidence that some recover better than others. So in that case, we did do 2 varieties, but it's just managing the number of treatments is really challenging.
No, I understand that, but I'm thinking because
stripes and no
especially in
stripes,
hard
and
red
like
springs
it's really cool.
there's a big move towards
But yeah, it's
Yeah.
just really. I don't think they've really worked out
the shorter varieties and something
just on the side.
I expect that's probably the case for sure.
That
Yep.
works in dry.
Yep.
How do you account for the differences between the 33% and 66% damage?
Like, how do we actually do it? Magic. You know, it's really the art of the human eye. So what we do is we start off with we'll just do a pass, and then we're aiming for ballpark 66% defoliation. And then once we've got that number, we cut it in half for the 33. So it'd be 4 passes back and forth with our machine. That's the best way. We don't like playing with the speed because then it gets hung up. And it's just kind of trial and error, because every time you go in there, the crop is different, right? If you had a heavy crop versus a light crop, it's all going to change. So we do practice plots, and then we try to calibrate it. On the canola, we actually do 25%, 50%, 75%, and 100%. I start off at my 100%, see how many times it takes me to go back and forth to basically obliterate the plot, and then we cut it back. And then once we've got a nice gradient, that's all I really care about, because I'm looking for differences. If it's bang on, great. If not, it's okay too, because we have the consistency among reps. So we're just trying to pick out differences more than anything.